This is a troubling one, so I kind of put it to the top of the list here. This is from Julie. I wondered if you could give me another perspective on something that has troubled me off and on through the years and very recently. I sometimes awaken in the middle of the night or in the morning with an overwhelming urge to find an object, such as scissors or sharp knife, and hurt myself. It is frightening to me since I don't consciously want to do it, and I become afraid that I will impulsively act it out and actually hurt myself. I have worked on getting rid of victimization and loving myself unconditionally. Is that what it's caused from? Not loving myself enough? When the dreams have gone away before it is because I asked God to make it go away, and it did. Why did it come back? How do I make it go away for good? Thank you very much in advance.
Okay, well, the fact that there is an awareness of this pattern and habit is probably her greatest defense at this point, because she has enough cognitive understanding that every time it happens, she's aware that it's a happening and that it comes from some kind of deep-seated program in her brain. She's already got control of it. I think if she wants to really have it go away on a permanent basis, then she has to be willing for it to show up at any point, because that then gives it the freedom to leave. Any resistance to it showing up at whenever it wants to show up will always perpetuate its danger that it may one day, and that's what continues to create it happening. So if she can simply say, I have the control, I have the balance, I have the knowledge that I need for you to do whatever you want, speaking to herself, who wakes up in the morning with this compelling need to do something strange. If she could simply say to herself, I love you enough to allow you to keep doing that, but I want you to know ahead of time that I'm aware that this is happening. So every time you attempt to do this, I'm simply going to say to you, I see you've shown up again. I acknowledge that you're here. However, this is the end of the action. So please go ahead and disappear yourself until the next time. She has to give that part of her brain the freedom to show up on its own, which means it now has the freedom to leave permanently. Do you understand how? I hope she understands what I'm saying, because all resistance creates persistence. And if she resists this thing happening, then it can only persist. If she allows it to be on its own accord with the knowledge that she can handle it, then it's free to leave forever, because it's no longer beneficial to her personality for this to show up. All acts that show up in our life are benefits to our personality. That's the reason why they do show up. So it's her programmed, her limited programming that continues to create this kind of bizarre activity. And the only way that it will ever feel free enough to not need to do it is when there's no reaction to it showing up in the first place. So that's the hint, that's the knowledge, and that's what will allow it to be gone forever and ever and ever.
Oh, that is excellent. It's free to leave by doing that.
Yeah.
I think too, we feel we've gone through the experience of owning something, whatever it is. This is no worse or better than anything else, because it seems like it's maybe more dangerous, but I mean, you know what I mean? It's all the same, just what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And if we feel like we go through the experience of owning, and then here it comes back again.
Well, there's a question on that, so don't go any
well,
further.
I'm just thinking, my only comment is, to allow that too. Expect that
exactly.
Because it's just to show you, here I am. Do you still want me? And if you go, yes, oh my God, it happened again. Now, yeah, okay, well, it's going to continue to stay
That's
there.
like giving it an applause, and it just gets in the queue line again.
Right.
Because it got response. Wow, how exciting. I showed up and they went crazy again. Ooh, that was really worth crowding into the line again.
Right.
And the next time it shows up, you can go, I notice you. You're looking good today. Feel free to do whatever you need. I'm not going to respond to you, but, it's your show. Go for it. And I'm going to go do the dishes because that's my next thing on my agenda. That kind of freedom and nonchalance dissipates the need for that to ever come again, because it's not getting anything out of the show. It's like, you do this great performance and at the end nobody claps. Well, you're not going to show up too many times. But if you clap and get a standing ovation, well, let's do a matinee.
Yeah, right.
Do number 4 because that's the one I was.
Okay, this is Debbie. When we own our emotions and a situation pops up that we recognize to be our mirror emotion, can we just observe and know it is owned by watching the situation play out? Or if it is owned, would that type of situation even show up in our lives, meaning we still haven't owned that emotion?
So if it shows up, it's not owned, based on the previous applause. Once it's owned, there is no benefit for it to show up. Owning means that there's no longer a neurological pattern to fire based on a response to your environment. So owned means you have severed its neurological infrastructure. Just means no response, and if you have no response, then there's no firing of the of that particular neurological pattern. So it eventually atrophies. Owning simply means it will not show up again. Showing up again simply means you got another opportunity in which to own it. And the ownership is strictly through observation, because if it shows up, just like the previous example, if you run your show 2 or 3 times and there's no response, you're going to get out of town because there's no response. So, and it will continue to play as long as there is an audience that shows appreciation for the performance. So
and it's sort of kind of like it'll show up, but we don't even notice it. Because I've had times where, like yesterday, maybe something happened, and I'll think, wow, I didn't react to that.
I've had that happen, and I think most students get that when they realize it's been owned, but there's the residence yet still of its neurology, still atrophying in its process. So it's transitioning from existence to non-existence, and in that process, yes, we may get bleed-throughs and fragments of it, but they don't carry the weight, and it's basically they've been given an eviction notice, and they're taking their time moving their stuff out.
But it's kind of neat to get that last little reflection.
Cool. Yeah, because you can give one of those high fives to the
yeah, and then you just totally free. It's never gone. Yeah. You don't even think about it again.
And you have the confidence that it's on its way out, and it has no longer that pull upon the emotional strings of your own instrument. Cool. Yeah, it's very cool. It's an exciting thing.
At least we get that one.
Another good example of why we need not have fear if we're being present and in the moment, isn't it?
Which part?
Well, of being afraid of the unknown, being afraid of being blindfolded and doing something, being afraid of those things would
that's
make
all
things
that's
happen,
the same.
huh?
Yeah, if you can be present, you're really there isn't presence isn't fear does not live in presence. Fear lives in reaction, which is not present. That's a forecasting and a response to something. Presence really is the elixir, conscious elixir that heals all things. Because in the present moment, you are an observer, not a judger, not one who concludes, not one who is comparing. So an observer finds fear in nothing because there's nothing to fear in observation, only in reaction.
And it's kind of hard to feel fear if
you're
being present.
You can't because you're not firing the neurons of that would give you that emotional response. Observation is without emotion, which means you can't be in fear and observation at the same time.
So if that fear hits, then you know, okay, I've gone back into me.
And you can get very present very quick with your fear, and it will dissipate because once it's observed, there's no emotion to it.
Cool. Okay.
Okay, from Alicia.
How can we learn the process of dissolving the power of inner demons that use lots of life energy to keep under control? Are these negative thoughts, habits, or attitudes already exist in mind? How do we really recognize them when they aren't showing up or hide behind outer reactions? How do we really observe the self at all times to dissolve those inner demons?
Okay. Well, first of all, inner demons is a very dramatic term. Where one would come up with that description has to be from somebody superstitiously telling them about these things. But, so what? We can call them inner demons, we can call them negative thinking, we can call them limited thoughts, we can call them conditions that keep us safe and don't allow us to expand or become adventurers or any of that. there is only one way that those can be dissolved, especially if you don't have any knowledge as to how they got created, how they're automatic programs. A single thought can turn them on, and then you're in a cascade of emotions, and I mean, it's a complete loop that without knowledge cannot break the loop of thought and the emotions and the experiences in the body relative to those thoughts. But if you will become a very good person who pays attention to those silent thoughts, and they're called voices, the voices in your head, and the moment that you begin to listen to those voices in your head, if you will step back as a detached observer, simply as if you are now observing somebody else talking to somebody else, and you were just going to observe what they said. If you can do that, then the loop of thought and the experience in the body of emotions gets broken, because you haven't engaged it. You haven't participated as if it was you they were talking to. Because the moment you engage that voice as if they were talking to you and you're now responding, you're in the loop. And those will perpetuate themselves until the day you die. To break and stop any limited thought, any demons that you so-called demons and their instructions or words or whatever it is within you, you must, as a detached observer, stand back, observe the thought, and do not engage the thought. If you can do that consistently over a short period of time, those connections, neurological connections, which is what it is, will then atrophy. And those thoughts, limited thoughts, conclusions, judgments, opinions, or demons will no longer have a life in your head. So that's the simplest answer. All you have to do is be patient and listen. Detach yourself from the conversation as if you're watching them talk to somebody else, and over time those voices will fade and be gone forever.
Cool.
Hello, Dr. Greg. It is about the voices in my head. Sometimes there is a voice that I have to do something special. Should I do what the voice wants to do, and I observe this voice and wait until the voice dissolves, or should I ignore that voice and I do not do exactly what the voice wants to enforce/argue?
Yeah, well, as soon as you engage and argue, you've got the voice that's going to come back even more powerful, because voices in one's head is simply neurological programs that are firing to give us feedback. And the only way that I know of that these can dissolve is to simply observe them without any interaction whatsoever. You don't deny them. You don't do what they say. You don't pretend they're not there. You observe them without engaging in any kind of activity with them at all, as if you were a distant, almost disinterested observer, but your job that you're getting paid a lot of money for is to simply watch what they do. But you're not allowed to get involved with it. It's like a psychiatrist who looks through those one-way mirrors to observe their patients to see, if they do anything silly in the cell. Well, you have to do the same thing. You have to be only the observer without any interaction whatsoever. And if those voices come up 3 or 4 times and there's not any acknowledgement other than observation, then they stop firing, because they can't fire. They only wire if they fire. If they don't fire, they can't wire, meaning they can't fulfill the voices in the head. So observation of those voices as if you were just being paid to look at them without any opinion whatsoever will dissolve those voices over a short period of time.
And what's the
I
difference?
love that analogy.
Yeah, because see, listen,
Cool.
that's it. The only reason why they are continuing to talk now is because somebody's paying attention. And you can't pay attention, you can only observe. And observation means there's no interaction, there's simply a disinterested third party keeping an eye on it, as if that was what your job was. And if they are not going to, if there's no real engagement, then they can't fire. And they just atrophy, and there they go. The voices are gone.
Is that our voices the same as the thoughts that we have?
Yeah,
I mean, and you can, you're watching them stream by, and that's crazy, but you don't look at it like it's an entity. It's a thought, and you don't choose that one, but you choose the next one, or you make one yourself intentionally, right?
Yeah, but these are the ones that are bothering her. These are the ones that are tormenting her. And the reason why they get to stay around is because she's affected by them.
Okay.
And the moment that she's no longer affected, and she can pretend she's getting paid to be an observer, but high pay, she's getting a lot of money to just observe and not interact. That's what disconnects them, because without you interfere, without you paying attention and getting and engaging them, they don't fire. Neurons that don't fire cannot stay wired. So that's just the theory, and that's the way it is in neurology. So that's the solution.
That makes sense.
What he was talking about, but I can tell you that if you observe them long enough without engaging the emotion, you are going to vanish that neurological connection, because it will atrophy without use, like all organs in the body. It will atrophy without use, and that's precisely the way a master goes about owning fragmented personality that could only react to its to its environment emotionally. And what bothered you before bothers you nevermore means you have observed it into its neutrality. So it's not functional anymore.
Well, he's thinking it's like he's trying to look at it to release suppressed energy.
But it's suppressed energy. It's just energy associated with that neural net. And if you observe it and you do not engage it, the suppressed energy, then it dissipates, because once it's no longer connected neurologically, it cannot produce the emotions associated with that neurological network. So it's no longer suppressed. It doesn't exist. It could only exist through a network. And once the network's gone, there is no way to reproduce that same energy associated with that network. That's the way we become.
Okay,
that's the way we evolve.
Okay.